I'm going to talk I try to divide stress down into three big areas. That's stress we choose in one way or another, stress we don't choose, and then stress about decisions. And there's obviously some overlap in those, but there's so many different ways that we deal with different kinds of stress that I thought that that's the way we'd frame it up. Now, stress has terrible effects on our health. There are all kinds of studies that if you have a stress level, I even have a stress inventory that if you fill it out, if you're above 300, it says that you're going to have, within the next year, you're going to have some kind of physical health problem. So it's kind of makes it real serious that way. It damages relationships. It drains our energy. And that's, I think, the biggest thing is it takes away the energy that we really need to live and to develop healthy lives. So rather than bore you with statistics, I'm going to talk about, I think, hopefully practical things. The first kind of stress is stress we choose. And nice people are incredibly vulnerable to this kind of stress. If you're the kind of person who likes to help other people out and you like to do nice things for people, people learn that and they will ask you for things. And, so we might try to help out in a situation. We might try to take care of somebody or, be there for somebody. And we're doing it out of a kind heart. But sometimes those stressors that we choose result in, stress that destroys our lives. So the stress we choose, the primary way that we cope with this are things like boundaries and margin. Like I say, there's lots of different ways that we choose stress. It might be, you choose to work more hours, or you choose to, raise a child or a grandchild that's not yours but needs a home. It may be that you're signing up on another committee for something. So those are things that we choose. Often there are situations that happen. They can be within relationships. Sometimes our own perfectionism gives us stress. I don't know if you've ever done something and your perfectionism kicked in and you just kept going at it until you destroyed it and had to start over. I've done things like that. So in some ways, those are things that we choose to get into, problems that we create. And so for boundaries, sometimes we have to learn that, we can't do everything. We're not Superman. We're not Superwoman. We can only do what we can do. And that can be difficult. It's the whole idea of creating margin. If we wrote to the edges of the pages all the time, sooner or later, we would come up with a word that didn't fit, and we'd either have to jam it in or kick it over to the other line. And some of us live our lives that way, to where we're writing to the edge, and then one thing comes up that we didn't expect, and we're in trouble. Sometimes stress that we choose, and obviously there's an overlap. Maybe we're choosing to watch the news 24 hours a day. In a sense, we didn't choose the events that are happening, but we choose to expose ourselves to that. And sometimes, sometimes I have a better day if I turn off the news, if I don't look at the news. I mean, I don't want to act like I live in a cave, but I can only handle about so much until it just starts to bother me. And so turning off the TV, or, it's like learning how to put this thing down. I got in the habit as a counselor of silencing it when I'm in session, because I have something more important to do. And I realized that I could do that at home too. At times that maybe I'm having dinner with my family or something's going on, that I don't have to be a slave to it, and I can look at it and return calls that way. So for stress that we choose, I want us to look at, hopefully you can see me, two circles. One is the great big circle. These are all the things in the world that we care about. And that can be huge and it can be overwhelming. But within that circle, there's this little tiny circle. And that's our circle of influence. And those are all of the things in the world that we can actually do something about. And if we spend more time in that smaller circle, we're going to be more empowered. We often worry the most about all the things that we can't do anything about anyways. If instead of worrying about those, we could do some small things, and often it'll feel like a nothing. It's like, well, you know, it's just could make a phone call, or maybe fill out some paperwork, or do something like that, something that doesn't really seem like a very heroic or big deal. But if we can do a few things, that can make a big difference. Or, you know, maybe sometimes there's stress at home and there's things that we need to do. And, you know, maybe if we spend 10 minutes cleaning up an area or something like that, that's something that, you know, we do have the power over. So we can do that. And then learn to, you know, just accept the reality that there's a lot of things that we care about that we can't really do a lot about. And the older I get, I think the smaller my circle gets, because, you know, when I was young, oh, I was going to change the world. You know, now if I can get up, have a good day, help a couple people along the way, hey, that's a win. It's a good day. And so sometimes looking at those two circles and learning to bring it down and say, okay, what can I actually do about this? Maybe there's nothing, but often there's just something small, but we can leverage that to really make a difference. Another thing for chosen stress is not saying yes to anything at the first opportunity. I had a mentor tell me that when I was in my 30s, I was doing a lot of things and stress was getting out of control. And he said, never say yes to anything the first time you get the opportunity. And I thought, how am I going to do that? You know, because people would say, hey, can you help me out? Sure, yeah, I can help you out. I can do that. And then 10 minutes later, I'm saying, what did I get myself into? Oh, why did I say yes? But I made a commitment, had to follow through on it. And, you know, so I found myself doing things like that. So I didn't know how I was going to do that, but I learned this little phrase that's helped me a lot. It's let me get back to you. Let me get back to you within the day or within the week, or depending on the situation. Let me get back with you. Let me check my schedule. Let me, you know, essentially let me check on my life and get back with you. And I found out two things. I found out that I had that 10-minute time span to where I figured I was probably going to say yes to something because it was an opportunity to help, and I like to help people. But then as I started thinking about it, it's like, I don't have to do that. I don't really need to do that. And so I would decide that I'm just going to tell them, no, I'm sorry. And instead of saying, can I do it? It was like, do I need to do it? Maybe I really am the only one in the world that can help. Sometimes that's the situation. You may be in a place where you are the only one who can do a certain thing. But the other reason that we may do it is we might say, you know what, I don't really feel like doing this, but it's part of who I am. It's part of my values. I need to do it. But a lot of times I don't need to do that. And, you know, the greatest enemy of the best is always the good. We can do so many. That's a quote from somebody. I don't really remember who it was, but I remember the quote. All the good things we do sometimes can get in the way of us doing the best things. And so it's okay to say no to some things. Or I'll get back with you and then we can think about it. The other thing that I found out, and to be honest, it kind of irritated me at first, was that by the time I got back to people, By the time I get back to people, they already had it figured out another way. I was just kind of the easiest sucker. And I was like, wait a minute. It was amazing how resilient people could be, and how they could use resources and find other ways when I couldn't fix it for them. And so I kind of learned that. And so time can sometimes give people a chance to work things out. So those are a couple things of not choosing, not saying yes at the first opportunity. Another thing is the whole idea of enabling. As counselors, we talk about that a lot, but we also kind of do that. We have to be cautious not to do that. One of the things that they teach us is don't ever work harder than your patient, which kind of makes sense. Seemed like a no-brainer to me. You know, if I'm working harder to help somebody manage their life than they are, it's not going to work. You know, if I see somebody 1 hour per week, I'm not under any delusion that I'm going to fix everything for them. But if I can give them some tools and then they can do the work, or they're willing to work it out, then that's good. That's where progress happens. Well, I found this really helpful for friends and family, though, because those are the people that we are more likely to work harder than they do. You know, it's like helping should always be here and their work should be here. The minute that our helping surpasses what they're doing, guess what happens? They drop their effort and it becomes our responsibility. And, you know, a couple of examples is, I mean, I've used this with my kids with their homework. I've said, you know, sometimes I feel like I am working harder to get your homework done than you are. And so I'll walk away. They don't like that so well. Or sometimes it's like, I feel like I'm working harder to get your bedroom clean than you are. So, you know, when it's done, then you can go somewhere. Or even things like, you know, I'm working harder to make sure your car payment gets paid than you are. That doesn't work that way. And so if we can learn not to put ourselves in those situations, and sometimes with what I would categorize as chosen stress, we might not be able to get out of it right away. This might be a 6-month or a 1-year plan to try to set some things aside. Maybe we're already committed to things and we can't just walk away from them, but we might say, hey, I've got to, you know, give up some things. So not enabling others or following through, I think that's, you know, that's a significant thing. And part of the reason I think we do that is the guilt of saying no. I think we need to learn how to cope with the guilt of saying no. Guilt makes us rethink something, but that's all it does. Once we've rethought it and we come to the same conclusion, then that's all that we need to do. So deal with that guilt of saying no. And something that I ask myself 2 questions. Number one, if I say yes to this and it doesn't work out so well, am I going to resent it? Have you ever done something and maybe you've gone all out for something and it flopped, or the other person didn't appreciate it? Then I am stuck with this bunch of resentment, and I don't like that. You know, that's a terrible feeling. So it's like, if I'm going to resent this, if it doesn't work out well, you know, that's going to urge me to say no. Another thing that I remember is no only hurts for a minute. Yes can hurt for a long time. I said yes to some things years ago that I am still paying the price for. And usually the people that I helped they've moved on, but I'm still stuck holding the bag, so to speak. And so to remember that, no might hurt for a minute, and especially if it's with loved ones, those are the hardest ones, aren't they? Friends, family, those people who we care about and we want to help. And so we say, you know what, I'll do that. And then we're stuck. So remember that. And then coping with the fear of conflict, I think, is another issue. Sometimes we just don't like conflict. I mean, I don't like conflict. It's kind of overrated. It usually never feels good, and it usually doesn't accomplish a lot. But if we're so afraid of conflict, we'll say yes just because we don't want anybody to be upset. But again, then we take on all that stress because of that. So, conflict is not, if somebody's mad at us for a little bit, that's okay. I adopted 11 kids, so I chose some stress. I realize that. And sometimes when they were younger, they'd be like, I don't like you. I'd say, that's okay. I'll find somebody who does. And sometimes I think that's the habit we have to have. Okay, somebody might not like me for a day or two or a week. That's okay. Hopefully they'll get over that, but I still need to manage my life and manage my stress. So that's stress that we choose on some degree or another. The second kind of stress is stress that we did not choose. And I think one of the first things that comes to my mind right now is the whole coronavirus mess, right? Nobody saw this coming. Nobody chose it. We didn't want this. It just happened to us. And guess what? We're stuck dealing with it. I think everybody that I know is about 30% more stressed. That's just my guesstimate with the coronavirus. Everything is harder. It's harder to go to the store. I'm in the office by myself, so I don't have to wear this, but the rest of the time, we need to wear a mask. Or, you get from halfway from the car to the store and you say, oh, I forgot my mask. Or you can't hear somebody because they have a mask on, just all of those things. And then, worrying about, am I going to get sick? Am I going to, we can't tell who has the coronavirus. So that is a great example of stress that we didn't choose. We didn't have anything to do with that. It just happened to us and we're stuck with it. Tragedies happen. Accidents happen. We lose people that we love. Life transitions happen. Whether it's stage of life things or physical health things, the body just doesn't quite keep up like it used to. A sudden loss, being the victim of crimes, things like that. Some of those things we really didn't have any big choice in. Maybe something with work has changed, and our strategy for that is a little bit different. Often what we do with stress we didn't choose is we spend a lot of emotional energy fighting it, arguing it's not right, it shouldn't happen, it's not fair. And there's a certain amount of anger that I think we have that's appropriate to that. But we can't live there because then that drains all our energy. When something like that happens, we have this term we call radical acceptance. The reason it's radical is because it's accepting things that we don't accept. It's learning how to accept things, not because they're okay, but because they are. Like if you've been in a traffic jam, you can fight that all day long. You can, try to problem solve or judge or blame, which is what we usually do when we're not accepting something. And you're still going 3 miles per hour. But that minute that you flip that little switch and say, okay, you know what, I'm going to be late, turn on the radio, everything sort of becomes peaceful. That's acceptance. You're not for the traffic jam. You still don't think it's a good idea. You still don't think they should have done the road work then, or this person should have driven that way or whatever. But you've accepted it because it is what it is and you can't do anything about it. And, you know, there are some things in life that are like that. And ultimately, it's the loss of a loved one. You know, that's like the most extreme example of this. We can either spend the rest of our life being angry about it, or we can embrace the fact that we have to figure out life without that person. And very difficult. But if we work towards acceptance and embracing the situation instead of fighting the situation, we have more strength left for life. And so stress we didn't choose, acceptance. And now if you can change the situation, change the situation. That's always the decision tree. If you can change the situation, change the situation. Can you change your perspective on the situation? If you can do that, change your perspective. But if the answer is no for both of those, you only have two choices left. You can either fight it and be miserable, or you can learn to accept it. So our head gets in the way because it's not okay. You know, I'm not okay with this, but there's nothing we can do about it other than choose to work with it, make the best of it, or fight with it. So stress we did not choose. And often that's the hard part, because there's that feeling of powerlessness that comes with that it's like, hey, I didn't do anything to ask for this, and it happened, and I'm angry, I'm upset. And that's where grief and the process of grief comes involved. And even if we didn't lose a loved one, we can still have grief. We have grief when we, you know, lose a job or even change a job because we chose to. Anytime there's change, there's loss, and we have a sense of grief. We have grief when we can't run like we used to, or maybe we can't walk like we used to, or can't work like we used to. There's a little bit of loss and grief there. So those are things that we didn't necessarily choose. And then the third type of stress is stress about decisions. Stress about decisions. I once had a guy who spent over a year trying to figure out which television to buy. He did research, he went through all this stuff. I can't imagine the amount of time and effort and pain he went over this. And he finally went out and bought a TV after reading everything, doing all this research. And then the next day he took it back because he found a better one. And, you know, my approach to that is life is too short. Buy a stinking TV, you know, any TV is better than no TV for a year, or, you know, sometimes any choice is better than working so hard to find the perfect solution. And I think that's where our perfectionism can really get to us. Sometimes stress about decisions, difficult decisions. Some that there is a no-win situation. No matter what I do, it's not going to turn out well. I have 3 horrible options and I need to pick one. Sometimes it's decision overload. And I think a lot of times people have had struggle with, you know, with that. There's just too many decisions coming at us right all at the same time. And it's just too much. It's like there used to be a commercial on, and this guy's going through the store, the grocery store, and then he gets to the cashier and they say paper or plastic, and he just like, that's it. That's the last. I can't make one more decision today, even if it's simple. So that can happen. And you know, sometimes these are combined. I think of the parents who are teaching their kids at home and trying to work from home. That's stress we did not choose, plus a lot of decisions. Do I try to send them to school? How do I manage this? And so there's can be a combination, but those people, they're probably busy online doing schoolwork, so they're probably not part of this group, but you may know some of them. I think some of the ways to do this decision stress is accept the fact that sometimes there just aren't perfect solutions. Sometimes you just have to pick one. Pick a method of doing something, whether it's the best or not the best. Is it one that will work? Sometimes any solution is better than no solution. Sometimes there aren't even any good ones, so we try to pick the one that has the least amount of bad consequences, the one we can live with. And a lot of times what can be helpful is make a good decision instead of waiting for the perfect decision. A lot of times we have to make decisions without knowing all the information, right? In retrospect, we can look back and say, man, if I would have known this, but we can't go back. Sometimes we just have to make a decision with the information that we have and move forward. And I think there it's really important to have that relationship of trust with yourself, that you can say, I trust myself to make good decisions. And I really believe that most people do make the best decisions in their best interest most of the time with the information they have. And that's really all we can ever expect. Sometimes things are thrown at us that we just have to cope with. And so make a decision. If you're struggling over what to make for dinner tonight, I have about so many things in my repertoire that I make, and after that, it's kind of like I'm tired of all of those things. But still got to make something. So just figure something out, make something. Don't spend too much time worrying about not having enough information, because if you wait for all the information, there may be a lot of consequences to putting that decision off. Other decisions we can wait. So knowing the difference, sometimes like with relationship issues, time is usually your friend, whether you're going into a relationship or leaving one. Time kind of has a way of letting you know if this is getting better or if it's getting worse. So anything done, real quickly, unless of course there are things like, abusive behaviors or, dangerous things. Time is typically your friend on some things. So certain things you can wait. And then don't second guess yourself too much. Once you make a decision, commit to it and go with it. Because if we second guess, think of all the energy. And that's really the way that I look at things a lot is, we only have so much energy. How much of that do I want to waste on things that aren't productive? Because I need to save some for things that are productive. And I don't want to waste a lot of time. If once I've made a decision, go forward with it, invest into it and go forward. And, that sitting there and saying, well, I wonder if I would have done this or that, if that would have, that's just wasted energy because the decision's already made. So live with that. So that's our main talk. I have some practical tips, and these will be available for you. Julie will send you a copy of these, and it's simple things like be honest with yourself about your limits. Put a number on it. If you have a stressor, from 1 to 100, where is it? 100 is your imminent death or the death of a close family member. That's a terrible, tragic, painful thing. Everything else is down from there. And so some of our things, they might really irritate us, but they only deserve about a 5. They deserve about a darn. That's it. Don't give them any more. You know, if you've ever seen anybody who's stressed out and you would think it was the end of the world because they got a flat tire or something, it's just not worth giving it that much value. Put a number on it and our brain kind of recalculates it. Another good practical tip is avoid making it worse. We're pretty good at taking a bad situation and finding a way to make it worse. If we can just avoid making it worse, life would be a lot better. Along with that is avoid destructive coping strategies. Sometimes we do things to cope that are destructive. Obviously substance abuse or things like that, but there are other things that we can do that they don't make anything better, they're destructive. And so avoid destructive coping strategies. Estimate the duration. That can sometimes help too. Okay, this is only going to be for a week or a month or a day, so I can get through this. And don't get forward into thinking that it's temporary if by next month this is over, I have 6 other things planned, because we can get into that cycle too. It's always temporary, but while we're going through this, we're planning other things. But don't feel like it's forever either. I know with the coronavirus, some of the most helpful things that I've told people is, I don't know when, and I wouldn't venture to guess, but eventually this pandemic, we're going to get through this. We're going to be on the other end of it someday. And they're like, oh yeah, we aren't, it feels like forever. I will give you that, but it's not. We will get on the other end of it at some point. Articulate your goal. What would it look like if you coped with stress better? What would life look like if you fixed it? Sometimes we don't even know. And if we can begin to envision it, what would life be like if this was working well? And then take small steps towards that goal. Don't wait until you can do the whole thing. Just take steps. We can take small steps. I can get up and I can do this today, and I can do that today. And maybe tomorrow I'll do this. And we do a little bit each day. It's less stressful. It doesn't become overwhelming, because once we become overwhelmed, guess what? The whole system shuts down. And then we just sit there and stare or something and accomplish nothing, or go back to bed, or, crash and burn in some way. So take small steps, find a way to grow during the process. If you're waiting on something, and sometimes we are just waiting for life to get better or something. Okay, while I'm waiting, what can I do to make my life a little bit better? Maybe I can eat better. Maybe I can exercise a little bit better. Maybe I can clean a few things up while I'm waiting. So find something positive to help you to grow. Maybe read a book, learn a new skill. That's a great way if you're like stuck at home with the coronavirus and just bored. Look, learn to play an instrument, learn a skill, learn something. Find something to enjoy. We need enjoyment. We need a sense of happiness. So do something that's fun. Make better transitions. If you're bringing stress home from work, or stress to work from home, figure out a spot in the road where you turn one off and let the other one on. So make better transitions, and then try to live in the present. We really can't live anywhere else anyways. We can't live in the future yet because we're not there. And living in the past usually is just depressing. It doesn't help us. So find ways to live in the present, where you have all your faculties and all your strength focused on the life that you're living right now, today. So that's it for my presentation. Are there questions, discussion